Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, North Koreans queue up to pay tribute to their late leader Kim Jong-il as the country commemorates the traditionally important third anniversary of his death. In one of the deadliest terror attacks in Pakistan's history, Taliban militants opened fire indiscriminately at a military-run school, killing more than 140 people, most of them innocent children. Plus, despite Russia's staggering rate hike to 17%, the value of the ruble plunges to a historic low, posing serious challenges to the Russian economy. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Wednesday, December 17th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Well, it's a solemn day in North Korea with people lining up to pay their respects as 3 years ago to this day, on December 17th, 2011, former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il died of a massive heart attack.
Kim Jong-il's sudden death saw the power shift to his young and then inexperienced son Kim Jong-un. A South Korean government official said Wednesday that North Korea is expected to hold a ceremony today to commemorate its late leader. Pyongyang has been holding a series of highly publicized events praising the late Kim's achievements during his almost 2 decades of rule. North Korea experts say that considering this year ends the official 3-year mourning period for the late leader, the North will likely use this time to publicize that Kim Jong-un is now in full control. Meanwhile, North Korea reportedly didn't invite its closest ally, China, to attend today's ceremony amid the current frosty political relations between the two countries. There was a lot of uncertainty following Kim Jong-il's death as to whether his young son would be able to fill his father's boots and maintain a firm grip on the country. Well, experts say that now, 3 years on, Kim Jong-un has basically cemented his own inner circle of aides and officials whom he can trust. Hwang Sang-hee tells us more.
He's bold and charismatic with the military, warm and friendly with children, and not afraid to reveal his weaknesses. At the same time, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un rules with an iron fist. 3 years into power, the young Kim is believed to be in the final stages of forming his own power base, ruthlessly removing anyone perceived to be disloyal. The 31-year-old launched a reign of terror last year when he executed his uncle Chang Song-taek. Since then, Chang's wife Kim Young-hee has vanished from the public eye, apparently replaced by Kim's younger sister Eoh Jin-joo, who has been given a vice ministerial position in the party. And Kim Jong-un makes sure that no one gains too much power. Choi Ryong-hae, who is generally regarded as the second most powerful figure within the regime, has frequently moved up and down the power ladder.
So he's been using his powers of appointment, dismissal, promotion, and putting people into place, into offices, and in exchange they provide political loyalty.
While Kim Jong-il bestowed immense power to the military during a famine in the 1990s, the young Kim has shifted command back to the party.
During the Kim Jong-un era, operations within the party have been normalized. The military has been placed under the party, no longer a special class, enjoying special favors.
Going forward, Kim Jong-un is expected to step out of his father's shadows and rule North Korea his way.
Kim Jong-un-style politics, economy, social culture, diplomacy, and defense. It's highly likely that Kim Jong-un introduces policies led by him that bear his own colors.
This while bearing a striking resemblance to his grandfather and North Korean founder Kim Il-sung, which experts say is part of attempts to justify the third-generation power succession. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
A South Korean opposition lawmaker who traveled north of the border on Tuesday says North Korea has a strong desire to hold talks with the South, but only when Seoul stops activists flying propaganda leaflets across the demilitarized zone. Park Ji-won from the New Politics Alliance for Democracy had delivered a wreath commemorating the third anniversary of Kim Jong-il's death on behalf of former First Lady Lee Hee-ho. Holding a press briefing upon his arrival back from the North Korean border town of Kaesong, Park said a North Korean official expressed his regret the two countries didn't hold planned high-level talks because of the leaflet issue. Park added the official said he hoped inter-Korean ties would take a step forward next year, considering that it'll mark the 15th anniversary of the signing of a peace and reunification declaration between the two Koreas. And on to a new turn in the recent hack attack on Sony Pictures. The same hackers are now making very serious threats against movie theaters that show the studio's forthcoming comedy film, The Interview. Song Ji-sun tells us more.
Remember the 11th of September 2001. That's the warning from hackers who want to stop the Sony Pictures movie, The Interview, from being released in U.S. theaters. The comedy is set to hit screens around the country on Christmas Day. In a message posted Tuesday, the group, which calls itself Guardians of Peace, threatened the movie maker saying, quote, "We will clearly show it to you at the very time and places the interview be shown, including the premiere, how bitter fate those who seek fun and terror should be doomed to." Fingers are expected to be pointed at Pyongyang for this latest threat. There have been unfounded rumors North Korea was behind last month's cyber attack on Sony Pictures because of the nature of the movie's plot. The movie stars Seth Rogen and James Franco as celebrity journalists who score an interview with Kim Jong-un, only to have the CIA order them to use the opportunity to pull off an assassination. The two actors have canceled media appearances following the threat, with the hacker threatening to attack the premiere set for this Thursday in New York. U.S. government officials have been quoted as saying that they're aware of the message, but they're downplaying the warning, saying it's highly unlikely the hackers would try and make good on their threat. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, a perfect storm of cheap oil, Western sanctions and the crumbling rouble is beginning to have a very troubling effect on the Russian economy. The nation's central bank sprung into action, hoping to turn the tide, but the rouble continued to free fall on Tuesday, raising some very serious questions about where things are headed. Kim Jong-il has more.
The consensus among economists is that Russia's economy is spiraling into darkness, being dragged down by the weight of the crumbling ruble. The central bank's move this week to raise its key interest rate by 6.5 percentage points is just one of many warning signs.
Without any doubt, the situation is very difficult and it needs absolute coordination in action from the government and the central bank. Coordinated action we are ready for.
But despite the central bank's action, the ruble dropped more than 11% against the US dollar on Tuesday, the steepest fall since the Russian financial crisis of 1998.
All we talk about is the ruble rate stabilization. We think that the exchange rate now does not correspond with fundamental macroeconomic circumstances, and it's visible even through how it's being detached from the dynamics and the conjuncture of the oil prices.
Oil prices have dipped below $60 a barrel, which is exerting pressure on the Russian economy. Should that trend continue into next year, the Russian economy is forecast to shrink up to 4.7%. Net capital flow could reach as high as $134 billion this year, more than double the total from last year. Worsening matters, the U.S. is planning further sanctions on Russia for its involvement in Ukraine. Kim Jong-il, Arirang News.
Korea's producer prices slumped to a 4-year low in November in one of the clearest indications yet of the effect plunging global oil prices are having on the Korean economy. The Bank of Korea says the producer price index, which is a barometer of future consumer inflation, dropped nearly 1% to 104.14 last month. That's the lowest level since December 2010. And the index has also fallen for the 4th straight month now. With oil prices plunging by more than 15% this month alone, the price of coal and petroleum products followed, falling nearly 20% compared to the previous year. Prices of agricultural goods on the other hand, edged up more than 2% over the same period. Two-way trade between Korea and Vietnam has never been so good, with the countries on course to smash an all-time yearly high in terms of volume. This forecast is expected to rise even further as the Korea-Vietnam free trade deal, concluded a matter of weeks ago, is set to come into effect in the months to come. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korea and Vietnam are hitting it off on the trade front. Trade volume between the two countries is forecast to surpass $30 billion for the first time this year. The cumulative volume between the two already recorded $25 billion during the January to October period, 40 times more than what was recorded when they first opened trade ties some 40 years ago. And it seems the volume is expected to shoot up even further, as a bilateral free trade agreement was concluded earlier this month. With the FTA deal, Korean exports to Vietnam are expected to increase by up to 28%, while Vietnamese exports to Korea are projected to increase by 20%. In turn, it's expected to boost Korea's GDP by up to 0.7% and increase Vietnam's by more than 3%. Vietnam is currently Korea's 8th largest trading partner, while Korea is Vietnam's 6th largest. Korea's exports to Vietnam are mainly in the form of intermediate goods, such as steel, petrochemical products, and electronic components. A large portion of their imports of Korean goods are made by some 3,000 Korean companies currently located in Vietnam. For example, Korean exports of telecommunications parts rose sharply by 24% this year from the previous year, following a $5 billion investment by Korea's Samsung Electronics after it built a plant in the Southeast Asian nation. Korea imports textiles and agriculture and fisheries products from Vietnam and is expected to open up its market for nearly 500 additional Vietnamese products. Kim Jong-il, Arirang News.
Pakistan is reeling from a heinous attack in the country that has left at least 145 people dead, most of them young kids. For more on this and other global headlines, we connect live to Eunice Kim at the News Center.
Now, the sun has risen on Pakistan, but not only those in that country, but the international community as a whole are still in shock over the events that took place on Tuesday.
That's right, Jin-joo. It is about 8:12 in the morning over there right now, nearly a full day since a group of Taliban fighters stormed the military-run school in northwestern Pakistan, weapons in hand. After an 8-hour gun battle, authorities confirmed all but 13 of the dead were school children. Islamabad has vowed it won't be intimidated. Connie Kim has the story for us.
What began as a regular school day for students in the city of Peshawar ended in tragedy. 7 gunmen intent on killing cut through the wire fence of a military-run school and started in the auditorium where an event was being held and opened fire. The assailants then went door to door, shooting students and teachers in their classrooms. At the end of their 8-hour assault, at least 145 people, mostly students, were dead. The siege ended in a shootout, with the Pakistani military killing all 7 attackers. The Taliban quickly claimed responsibility, saying it was revenge for a Pakistani military offensive that has been targeting the Taliban's base of power since June. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif said his government would not back down.
Our prayers go to the families whose children were killed in this tragedy. I think this war and struggle will continue until the terrorism is completely rooted out of this country.
World leaders were quick to condemn the violence.
No cause can justify such a brutality. No grievance can excuse such horror. It is an act of horror and rank cowardice to attack defenseless children while they learn.
U.S. President Barack Obama said that terrorists had once again showed their depravity. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, Pakistan's longtime rival, said the school attack was a crime against humanity and called for vigilant action. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Australia, thousands of people have come out to pay tribute to the two hostages who never made it out alive of the 16-hour siege that rocked the nation this week. They were two of the three killed in the standoff at Lindt Chocolate Cafe in Martin Place, together with the gunman, 50-year-old Islamic State sympathizer Manharon Monis. At a memorial service, Archbishop Anthony Fisher said 34-year-old cafe manager Tori Johnson had tried to wrestle the gun out of Monis's hands, triggering the early morning police raid. He said 38-year-old barrister and mother to three Katrina Dawson was shielding a pregnant friend from gunshots. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Tony Abbott acknowledged a new tough national security law passed in October had failed to prevent the hostage crisis. He promised a transparent investigation on why the Iranian, with a long criminal history, was not put on any terror watch list. And finally, on Twitter and Facebook, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush has given his biggest indication yet that he will make a run to be America's 45th president. He said he reached the decision to actively explore the possibility after consulting his family over the Thanksgiving holiday. The 61-year-old said he plans to establish a political action committee by January to gather ideas that will expand prosperity for all Americans. Jeb Bush is the brother and son of two former U.S. presidents, George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush, respectively. Americans go to the polls to elect their next leader in 2016.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
The under fire former vice president of Korean Air is scheduled to appear before prosecutors this afternoon, and all eyes are now on whether an arrest warrant will be issued for Cho Hyun-ah and what kind of charges she will face. Kim Min-ji reports.
The probe into the nut rage controversy deepens. Cho Hyun-ah, the former vice president of Korean Air, will appear before prosecutors in Seoul on Wednesday afternoon. Attention is being drawn to whether an arrest warrant will be issued for Jo, who made a Seoul-bound Korean Air flight turn back to the gate to deboard the head of cabin crew, all because she was upset that her nuts were not served according to the manual for first-class passengers. There are two scenarios that could lead to prosecutors issuing an arrest warrant. First, it depends on whether they believe Jo engaged in evidence tampering. Crew members and passengers who witnessed the incident say Korean Air officials pressured them to give false testimonies. Even if Jo didn't directly engage in the process, it may still be hard for her to evade an arrest warrant, depending on whether the company's organizational culture was based on top-down decisions. It also depends on whether her actions broke aviation laws. A person can face up to 10 years behind bars if a plane that is already on the taxiway is turned back to the gate illegally. Prosecutors will also probe into whether abusive language and violence was used. They are expected to decide on whether to seek an arrest warrant after their investigation into Jo. On Tuesday, Korea's Transportation Ministry filed a complaint with the prosecution against the former executive. Korean Air could also be hit with a fine of up to $1.3 million or even a 3-week-long suspension of operations between New York and Seoul. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The number of patent requests worldwide shot up last year, as studied by the World Intellectual Property Organization shows requests were up 9% across the globe compared to a year earlier. China had the lion's share at 32% of the global total, followed by the U.S. and Japan. Korea, meanwhile, came in fourth on the list at 8%. Patent filings are generally considered a yardstick for measuring the strength of innovation and competitiveness of a country. Globally, over 2.5 million patent applications were filed last year. Korea has secured a second deal to export homegrown K9 self-propelled howitzers. Under the agreement that is set to be signed on Wednesday, Samsung Techwin will sell 120 of the howitzers to Poland for $320 million. A first batch of 24 will be exported by 2017. The rest will go through technical transfer and be manufactured in Poland. Back in 2001, Samsung Techwin signed a deal with Turkey to export 305 of its K9 units.
Now, shifting gears now, a heartwarming documentary about the life of a couple that has been together for 3/4 of a century, 75 years, has become an unexpected hit here in Korea. And it's not just the elderly who are going to see it. Our Kwon-soo reports.
이게 뭐야? 꽃이. 그러면 더 나았어? 더 나았죠. 그럼 난 또 당신이 양주가 그래. 아이고 그냥 더 낫네. 할아버지요. 인물이 아주 환하고요.
Not many words were needed for this documentary to warm the hearts of more than 1 million moviegoers in Korea. My Love, Don't Cross That River tells the true 76-year love story of an elderly couple. 89-year-old Kang Ge-yeol and 98-year-old Jo Byung-man have been together since 1938. Director Jin Mo-young decided to zoom in on the couple's simple life in a mountainous village in Gangwon-do province after watching an earlier TV documentary about them called Gray-Haired Lovers. The film was released in 186 theaters late last month, but due to its popularity, it's now being shown on more than 800. Last weekend, the documentary beat out Hollywood blockbuster Interstellar. What's interesting is that the number of young people checking out the film is higher than expected. More than half of the viewers have been in their 20s.
I felt a lot while watching The Grandmother.
I learned what real love is about.
I really enjoyed it. I want everyone to watch it.
The movie has brought tears to viewers and film critics alike, who say the lifelong love story shows that real love does not wither with age. Kwon-soo, Arirang News.
Now, a team of local scientists have merged science and art to identify and analyze different painting techniques from different historical time periods spanning 800 years. And they've used the Mona Lisa as their muse. Connie Lee reports.
It's one of the most famous masterpieces in art history, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. But what if da Vinci was actually born after the Renaissance period? How then would Mona Lisa have looked? Well, now with the help of science, we have an idea. The iconic painting, if created in the Rococo or late Baroque period of the 18th century, would have been brighter, used more delicate colors with rougher brushstrokes. So how was this conclusion made? Using digital analysis of nearly 9,000 Western paintings spanning over 800 years, local scientists have been able to identify different colors and techniques used in different time periods from the 11th century to the mid-19th century. Professor Chung Ha-woong and his colleagues from Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology analyzed the big data not only to bridge art and science, but also for practical use.
With the collection of all this data, it can help differentiate real works of art from the forged ones and also help restore masterpieces to be more like the original.
The study, printed in the scientific journal Nature, shows that paintings have evolved to become more colorful and complex in terms of contrast and brightness since the medieval period, or after oil paints were first introduced. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, we had our coldest morning of the season today, and the current temperature in Seoul is at about -8 degrees Celsius, but strong gusty winds are making it feel a lot colder. So cold wave alerts have been issued in many regions. Cold wave advisory is still in place for Seoul, and warnings are in place for parts of Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheong-do, or Gangwon-do provinces, that is, while a heavy snow advisory is in effect for some areas in Chungcheong-do, Jeollado provinces, and Gwangju as well. And as we can see, rain clouds are still dropping snow on those regions. In the meantime, the upper parts can expect to have sunny skies throughout the day under freezing conditions. Now, the afternoon temperature here in Seoul will only hike up to -6, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at -1 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island should rise to 3, while Daejeon and Tukdo will get up to -4. Now, tomorrow morning will be even colder than today, starting out at -14, so be sure to dress even warmer tomorrow. And we could have another snowy day at the end of the week. But that's all I have for you today, and let's send it back to Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather, and those are stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again at the same time on Thursday. Thank you for watching.